And I watched him, like have these like really creative, big ideas and go all in and it not work out. That didn't devastate him. He just picked up the pieces, he salvaged what he could, and then would move it on to something new. But I think sometimes people don't always see that. So they see like just this huge successful business and they think, oh, it's always been shiny rainbows. And yet over here, they're like, this sucks. I'm losing this money. I've invested this. I'm not getting it back. Or there's number crunch days. There's like highs, there's lows, like all these things. Hey, Kimberly, I am so honored and so excited to have you here.
Renae, it's so excited to have the tables turn. You were a guest on the Crown Yourself podcast, and I'm loving being on the other side of the mic now.
I know. It was fun. I like loved when you reached out and then we crossed paths before or later. And I was like, how did we get cross paths? Like, and you're like, oh, we did an interview. And I was like, no, I mean, like, how did that happen? But it's like, sometimes we just don't know, like how, you stumble across somebody on Instagram and you're following them and then you're like, your worlds cross and overlap and all these things. But it was fun to be on your podcast and then now to have you on yours. Or have you on mine, and having launched a book kind of similar. I think you were a little bit ahead of me and I got to be a part of your book launch and kind of be a part of that space a little bit right before I was launching mine. So like have us both kind of launching books around the same time. It's really been fun to watch that evolution for you and your journey there. I would love to know, like, just personally how the book launch went for you and like what you're learning, all those things, like just on a side note. But I would also, I don't feel like I really know a bit about your entrepreneur journey. So share a little bit, like, how did you get to this place? Like all the things.
So I've been an entrepreneur now for 17 years.
Wow.
I've had 5 businesses. The first business that I started was a Pilates studio. I was freelance Pilates instructor first, and then I had my own private Pilates studio for 13 years in my private Pilates business. It eventually became a studio in Los Angeles. And that was my first business. And that was also my foray into personal development and the mindset and how all of those aspects work together. I don't have my kids are still young. So, I mean, my coaching business really grew with my first child. I started my second business that I have now, which is our podcast guesting consulting agency with my second child. Just chosen not to start a third business with my child.
It's like every baby comes another business.
I've always birthed twins. I mean, we are releasing a children's fart book, and that's part of like our project with our homeschool with my kids. I'm not really considering it a second business, but who knows what it can turn into. But I think that when we normalize as women, the fact that we have these other priorities of our life, and that's okay. And like I had a client who I actually fired, that after we had a discussion, that was trying to disparage me in a way of calling me, like, I get it, you're a mom with a side hustle and all that. And I said, well, actually I've owned, a few businesses. This isn't my first rodeo. I had my Pilates studio. Then I was the president of an e-com company, which is where I definitely learned about like balance and understanding cycles and treating your body with kindness, because I was not doing that within the 2 years that I was president of that company. I had a successful exit from that company, and then I started my coaching company. But it took me about 1.5 years to get my coaching company off the ground because I was so mired in doubt and fear of, being seen, fear of making a mistake again. Because while being bought out was a wonderful experience once I got the check, the experience of negotiations and dealing with lawyers for the first time in my life was not a positive experience. It was 3 months of challenge and struggle. And those were the 3 months that I was also planning my wedding. And we signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I walked down the aisle. And it was simply because my husband was like, we're just going to accept something. We're not going to continue on negotiations on our honeymoon. And I was like, you're right. I really didn't want to start my new life as a married woman with my husband going through even more. I wanted to have closure on that chapter. And so I did. And we accepted the offer after the 5 passes, which is typical when dealing with anything legal. And I was satisfied with what I received. And then I was on my honeymoon and I was like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And I realized that was when I had the idea for Crown Yourself and my coaching company. of having a business model that was very holistic, where I could support leaders in building not only an empire that they love, but one that doesn't, take away from their primary relationships, and it doesn't take away, it's not at the expense of their body or their health. Because when I had my ecom company and I was president of that company, my hair was falling out, I was gaining weight, I was waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning with panic attacks and sweating, and so my hormones were definitely off.
Yeah.
Because I was having customer emails or product or manufacturing issues with our backstretching device that we were selling. There was momentum behind it, but at the same time, I was like, is this momentum? Is this an alignment? And I think that that's something as business owners that we have to ask ourselves, because alignment changes. Just like relationships are in our lives for reasons, seasons, and lifetimes, so are businesses as well.
Yeah.
And my Pilates business and the experience that I learned from that evolved and prepared me with the skill set to be able to be a great coach. And my coaching business, and being also a second generation entrepreneur, I watched my parents build a company from nothing over the course of 30 years. And I saw my dad do it as a highly functioning alcoholic and addict. And I said, well, if he can do it like that, I could probably, what could I do in 10 years that he built in 30? And so, but I've been able to see this and be imbued with these principles of entrepreneurship along the way, which I think is definitely a gift that those who are starting businesses who have been raised by parents who were employees don't have, because there is a perspective difference in risk. Like just 2 years ago, we were struggling with a cash flow crunch, and that's very normal. A lot of business owners struggle with that once they realize and start to trust themselves with earning revenue. And so, and I found that typically it's around like that 250K mark where you start making like good money and you're like, oh, this is great. And now we want to invest into scale. And then there's like a cash flow crunch from the scaling. And I was talking to my mom about it. I was like, Mom, I don't know how I'm going to do payroll in 2 weeks. Like, cause we were just crunched. And she was like, oh, sometimes we would have weeks where I didn't know if we'd make payroll in 2 days. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was normalizing a level of risk that like those conversations became very normal for me. To where I was able to tolerate a lot more risk. And I think that that's something that we have to understand with our nervous systems is, as you grow anything, there is change, there is challenge, there is struggle, there is risk involved. And it's your nervous system and your physiological systems do need to be strengthened to be able to withstand the capacity and the responsibility that comes with that next level.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like it's fascinating. You kind of talked about like the differences between, like being raised by an entrepreneur versus not, because I had both. My mom was an entrepreneur, or not an entrepreneur. She worked in healthcare, and my dad did. And my husband, he was the same. He had both, but his were like struggling entrepreneurs. Whereas like my dad was a successful entrepreneur. So my husband has had this like, we are only going to be, stable jobs. We're only, like, I want the stable job, the stable income, the consistency of that, versus like, I'm in this place of like, I want the freedom. I want to be able to control my time. I want to be able to do this. And so it's been interesting to watch that dynamic for us, and the language and the conversations that we've had based on those upbringings.
Yeah.
Because, and I think this is something too, I think a lot of people that don't have a lot of experience with entrepreneurship in the very beginning don't always see the like highs and the lows. So like my dad, I remember watching him do different deals, do different things like growing up and whatnot. And I would see the ones that do really well. And I would also see the ones that tanked, right? Like, so you see like, he, made $1 million over here, but he lost $1 million over here or whatever. But not everybody always sees that. And so I got very comfortable knowing, hey, some of your ideas are going to be $1 million takers and some of them are not. And that's okay too. And I watched him, like have these like really creative, big ideas and go all in and it not work out. And that didn't devastate him. He just picked up the pieces, he salvaged what he could, and then would move it on to something new. Every time he did that, it was like everything you like you said, you learn, you grow, you expand. But I think sometimes people don't always see that. Like they see like just this huge successful business and they think, oh, it's always been shiny rainbows. And yet over here, they're like, this sucks. I'm losing this money. I've invested this. I'm not getting it back. Or there's number crunch days. There's like highs, there's lows, like all these things. And I think part of it's our messaging. Like I think in just the online business space, there's so much messaging and marketing around like, let's get out of the feast and famine. Let's get out of like, how do you, get consistent 30-day this, or how do we like, there's just so much messaging. I think a lot of us, one, are jaded over the messaging. I'm like, not another messaging, but then it's like, I see it in my side. Like people move faster when there's certain things in that messaging than with others. And so I can see why these people are putting this message out there, but it's just like, man, if we really had the realities, like I've shared this story before, but like my dad owned kind of like a fleet of gas stations, grocery stores, like things like that when I was a kid. And we lived above one of the gas stations. So the gas station was at the bottom, and then we had an apartment in the like above. And so imagine, I mean, because it's kind of like working from home now, but like we lived at where my dad worked, and like any error, any problem, anything, we are literally like just a floor above. And I can remember living and working and breathing it even as a child. Like I would run the cash register. I would be sweeping out back. I would be doing all the different things. Like you have this. And I remember times when my dad would be like, oh, I got to stop by the store just for, bank pickup. And we're like, please, Dad, don't go in, don't go in. Cause we knew it was going to be this like hour-long thing. So I think it's just this like variation of like what your experience, what that knowledge of risk versus work versus energy put into it, like all of that, it's just different than being an employee. And like how many of us grew up with this employee work mindset.
Yeah. I
Just
mean,
from education.
my parents were first generation entrepreneurs. So, I mean, they broke the mold, and I really respect them for that.
Yeah.
For taking that risk, because it does, in most people's perception, entrepreneurship seems risky. However, as someone who has coached and worked with high performing entrepreneurs for 9 years now, like I have seen that if you have the skill set of knowing how to influence and generate income from nothing, that skill set, meaning you know how to sell, that skill set is transferable into any industry. And so when I was in Australia, so my husband and I were those Americans who got stuck abroad during COVID in Australia. And I knew that I could, my business had been completely digital since 2018. It was fine. I knew my husband's industry. He's been a voice actor for 30 years. I knew that was going to shut down. And I said, yeah, we can sustain it. Like my business is good. Like I can support us while living abroad. And by the way, it's only 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Like how long could this be?
Yeah.
2 weeks turned into 2 years living abroad, which was wonderful. We lived in a great place on the beach of Australia, like literally had the best COVID experience that probably anybody had.
Yeah.
And yet I talked to so many business owners because where we were living was a high tourist town and there were no tourists coming in. And so we saw restaurants getting shut down. We saw tourism businesses closing. And like for me, I walked around with this responsibility because where we were living, it was very safe to walk around, and like we had very few restrictions aside from the major lockdown that happened. And so I would go out to the coffee shops and be like the only person in the coffee shop, but I would feel like that's my responsibility as a fellow entrepreneur to support these other businesses that were struggling.
Yeah.
And I had many conversations with business owners during that time. And I said, look, like, you know how to, if you know how to have the skill set to build a business and you know how to sell, then whether you close down your travel business and you start an Etsy shop, whatever you do, you have that skill set of building a team, of building systems, of knowing how to sell. And that skill set will serve no matter what industry you choose to go into next.
It's so true. And it's like you talked about too, like the skills that you learned when you were building or doing the Pilates stuff, how that transformed and morphed into what you do now and all those things. I look at that too, of like everything that we do gives us skills and tools to be able to morph into other areas. Like I mean, even as a parent, like the things that I do as a parent help me influence online, and online helps me influence the way I parent, and like vice versa. Like when we get ourselves out of this box of looking at ourselves in silos and look at how am I taking care of my body and how does that directly impact my business? How do I take care of my relationships and how's that impacting my business? And how is my business impacting the way I impact all of these other, like it is, we've got to get into that place. Like you talked about the holistic piece, right?
Yeah.
Of looking at ourselves as these very holistic people, and that the skills that we learn, whether it's sales, whether it's relationship building, whether it's networking, whether it's communication, whether it's whatever, it makes such a huge difference. And you said at the beginning, just kind of circling back about like professionalism. When I was recently, I like downloaded the Google Photos widget on my phone. And so it'll pop up and be like 7 years ago today. And it'll show me like these cute little pictures of my babies, and they're like oohing and awing, and my kids are like hating it right now because they're 14,
Yeah.
10, and 9, and I'm like, oh my goodness, look how cute you were, and they're like, mom, or like the ones where they're like streaking around the backyard naked,
Yeah.
and I'm like, look at you, they're like, mom. But in some of those videos are some of my very early, like social media videos that I was making, or some of the videos from like my very first course that I put out,
My
or
gosh.
whatever. And I cringe watching them. One, just for like the lack of skill, but also there's this essence of, like you talked about, like this energy, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that I think at that point in time, I was trying so hard to be quote unquote professional. I was trying to do it right. I was trying to, follow the rules. I was trying to make it. And so I was listening to what everybody else was telling me to do. I was trying to look like everybody else. And these videos are just so flat. They're so like, I don't even know how to describe it, to where now I'm like, today I like literally, I was going to straighten my hair and I got the straightener hot. I started straightening it. I was like, no, I do not want to do this today.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I am doing all of my recordings today with a messy bun in the top of my hair. Not because I'm like being lazy, but just like, no, my hair, it was at the point where like, it wouldn't have even looked good if I straightened it. Like it was that like, you know,
Yeah.
I haven't showered in a day or two. And so, like, for me, I know that what my hair looks like has less to do with the video and the content or than the content, right? It's going to be my energy. It's our communication. It's our conversation. That's what's going to make it, not whether or not I'm, again, in my trailer with not a very pretty background. I don't have like the purple, like fun little lights and all of these things that I think sometimes we think are the most important pieces of making our videos, of making our content or whatever, because those are like the really big people in the industry. That's what they have. But when we start to really look at it, it's like, it's the skills of how do I relay conversation? How do I communicate? How do I like help support people? How do I help transform people? How do I help move people? How do I create that momentum rather than looking at like the box of professionalism, I guess, in a way.
Mm-hmm. So true. So funny story, Renee. Like when I first started Crying Herself, the first thing I did was like buy a heap ton of video equipment and like
Yeah.
fancy background and all the things. And you know how many videos I published? Because I was so scared. I had all the equipment, I had the whole setup, but I just would get stuck on like what to say. And I had done videos for my fitness company and I produced them and put them out there. But suddenly when I was like, oh, well, with Crown Yourself, it was like this pressure of like, I have to be this performance and embody these values of like the things of ownership and empowerment. And I'm like, no, 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 no. The problem was my energy. And it wasn't because of the videos. It wasn't because of the background. I had all the stuff to make it look
Yeah.
good. The problem was I wasn't embodying the values that my business took a stand for.
Yeah.
And I wasn't embodying the values of ownership and full authenticity. Like I remember when I started my business, we did a photo shoot because, you need the brand photos and all the things. And I did this photo shoot and I looked at my wardrobe and all of my wardrobe, because of my background with being an e-commerce president, had become this buttoned up professional wardrobe with no sparkle, no bright
Mm-hmm.
colors. It was dull. It wasn't reflective of me. And I had catered to what I had thought the professional businesswoman should be wearing, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these things going into these bigger meetings with mostly men in manufacturing. And I had dulled down my sparkle and my true authentic self. And because I didn't know myself, I was letting the outside world determine who I should be.
Yeah.
And so I did the photo shoot. I had to hire a stylist to get, outfits that I thought, oh, this is who I want to be. But I still was scared to show up as her
Yeah.
because I had just had so much conditioning around what a professional quote unquote woman should be in business. And I think that that's why I'm so glad if you leave my son, my 3-year-old coming in, because I think we have to normalize taking action regardless of how things look and
Mm-hmm.
understanding what are those actual actions that move the needle. What moves the
Mm-hmm.
needle is showing up. It's not buying, it's not investing in a coach. It's not buying film equipment. It's actually taking the courageous action steps that move the needle. And more often than not, those are the things that we're avoiding in our
Mm-hmm.
businesses, whether it's sending the email, asking for the sale, worried that you're going to feel annoying or like salesy because you're asking for the second time of,
Mm-hmm.
a follow up. These aspects of business that actually that are the things that move the needle are the things that require courage.
Yeah.
Not always throwing down your credit card is something that requires courage, even though I know both you and I and our mentor has said transformation is in the transaction.
Yeah.
It comes from taking those aligned action steps, because spending money to just be able to say that you're moving the needle doesn't actually move the needle.
Yeah.
I think, like for me personally, it's like when I put in a big investment in like that, it's like I'm committed to this. Now I'm actually gonna, it like forces me to take the action. So I think
Same.
that's where that, the transformation's already taken place because you've already stepped into this place of like, I identify with the transformation of where I'm going. And so I'm like willing to put money down on it, which I think is why that makes such a huge difference for people is like, okay, like I even know, like I invested in a VIP day, hasn't even happened, right? Like I invest in the VIP day and then we're like messaging back and forth. She's like, okay, I can do this date. And I look at it, I'm like, shoot, that's like 8 weeks out. Seriously? It's like, it was the very last date option I gave her was like the one that she picked. And I was like, okay. So as I've been waiting for this VIP day, I've been taking actions. One, that I already knew, but I think two, it was like this element of like, okay, I'm making a shift. Things are happening. Things are shifting and changing. That I'm like, by the time I get to the VIP day, I'm gonna be like, I don't need the VIP day. I already did everything. Not entirely, but it's like that's what happens when you invest in yourself. Is you start
Yes.
taking those movements and you start making those actions. You start seeing things from that different level, that different version of yourself. And I know that that was something you and I were talking about beforehand. Was this like I don't? I'm like I am a big momentum person. I like big action. Actually slowing down and not taking action and like sticking with something is more of the place that I need to learn to grow
Mm-hmm.
versus the actual taking momentum. But I see so many women stopping themselves from actually taking action or doing things because we get caught in this like wheel of not just it being good enough, but being ready enough. But even then, like I was thinking about it today. I was like driving and I was thinking about like right now, it's like I see all this like spiritual stuff around like vibe and energy and stuff. And I was like, wow, when I sit back and I look, I'm like, I see the same people in the same spot that they were in years ago, but like they're in the same spaces, like they're doing the same thing. They're not like, but it's the, we've almost like we've identified as like, oh no, they are evolving, they are changing. But I'm like, but are you really like, and I look at people in my life that have been in that like personal growth, like that personal development space their entire lives. And sometimes I look at like the relationship I have with them and I'm like, but that relationship has never changed. Like, are you really changing? And so this like little bit of I guess it's an integrity piece of like, how are we buying into the spiritual stuff, the personal development stuff, the limiting beliefs, the blocks as a means of we are moving the needle but really we're not actually moving the needle. We're not actually doing the thing that's really going to help get that inner transformation or get the business transformation or get the movement happening. Like we're kind of waylaying it. And I know like you and I, the example I talked about was like the blocks, right? Like the limiting beliefs and the fears and the blocks. Like I spent so many years
Same.
digging. Like people were like, oh, if you haven't hit this goal. I remember my very first coach, I was in network marketing and I told her, I was like, I'm doing all the things. You're telling me to reach out to 3 people every single day. I'm reaching out to 100 every single day. And she's like, oh, well, then it must be your mindset. There must be something in your mindset. And that was like the beginning for me of like, there's something in my mindset that needs to change. Like what in my mindset? And that was like, okay, I got to figure out what this is. I got to figure out what part of my mindset needs to shift because I'm taking all the actions and I'm doing all the things, but I'm not getting the results. So it's my mindset. There's something there. And that spun me on this like probably 7-year journey of clearing limiting beliefs, clearing out blocks, like figuring out like, what is this invisible block that's in my subconscious that I don't know is there that's keeping me from doing my thing, right? Like, or that's keeping me from getting the result. And I spent so many years doing that and constantly in this place of feeling like I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. Like I have all of the systems, I have all the tools, I have all the pieces, I've done all the actions, I've done the things, but I'm not getting the result. So it's my mindset and a limiting belief and a fear or something in me that I need to excavate and figure out what it is. And it was probably 2 years ago, I was in a breathwork session and the breathwork facilitator said, can we just let our limiting belief be here? Like, can we just acknowledge it? And can we say thank you to that limiting belief and just know that it's going to be here with us? And that was like mind blown, mind shattered of, wait, what if I don't actually have to eliminate my limiting beliefs and get rid of them? What if I could just allow them to be here and say thank you to them because they are there to help keep us safe. And in that, they tone down their like red flags and get us off of where we're going and just say, thanks for trying to keep me safe. Let them do that, bring us back, and then keep moving anyway. And that one moment shifted so much for me because I think after that, it was like this decision of the fears, the limiting beliefs, the blocks, like all of those things are only there when I choose to let them be there. Like I can acknowledge them and say, yeah, right now I'm scared shitless. And this little version of me is saying, Mayday, 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 because we're worried what people are going to think about us. We're worried about how people are going to judge us. But I know that the vision that I have or the mission that I have is bigger than that fear. I just need to let that fear know I see it and we're there and we're going to move anyway. And like, for me, that was such a radical shift that I see happening. I don't know. I just feel like it's like, maybe it's in the circles and the spheres that I've been in, but I see it happening a lot of like people getting stuck in the space of feeling like they're moving and they're feeling like they're taking action. They feel like they're making changes, but they're really not doing anything. They're just kind of stuck in this personal development cycle.
Yeah. And that's the partner to personal development is personal acceptance. And that's why I mentioned the thing about the transformation is in the transaction is like the perception of, oh, I'm going to solve this with doing this one big courageous action. But it's not just that. It's the daily micro actions of consistent realignment that you're taking. And it's not necessarily just looking and trying to dig down the rabbit hole of how am I broken or like what do I need to fix? Because that's actually a very masculine principle of like the fix it, the guy, like
Totally.
the guy who needs to strap on his tool belt and come to fix you.
Yeah.
That's us adopting as women a very masculine side. And it's not to say that there aren't things that need to be shifted, but I think that there is a better way to go about it. And then just like going down the rabbit hole of like, let me excavate every single limiting belief that is coming up.
Yeah.
Because you're 100% right. They are there to keep us safe. I call them the Trojan horses. They're there to keep us safe and in the familiar. So safety is not necessarily safety. It's what keeps us familiar, what is familiar to us. It's to keep us in control. It's a huge one with high achievers. So very successful high achievers I've worked with. would rather control their own downfall than stop the self-sabotage. And then the other piece is they keep us in a space of societal acceptance.
Yeah.
Because we can accept and we get actually validation sometimes from people of like, oh, you're trying. Oh, I understand you. I see you in the struggle. Hashtag the struggle is real. Like, I see the limiting beliefs. I see you working through that limiting belief because we connect from limitation then.
Yeah.
And we then get validation and connection, which is a human need for having that limitation in the first place. So thus we then will create more limitations so that we can have more connection because we are biologically hardwired to have connection.
That's so cool. It's fascinating too, because like I see this, like we as a society tear down people that are succeeding.
Yeah.
Right? They like stand apart and you're like, oh, like see that too of like how much we're so willing to be in our sorrows and our limitations because we can like wallow with other people. But once one person rises out of that, it's like we want to tear them down.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Or we stop ourselves from connecting and letting that person lift us up.
Exactly.
I was speaking at a conference and 2 years ago, and I was emceeing, and the message that really came through was, if she can, I can too. And I was sitting with one of the fellow directors of this conference, and she was like, yeah, I didn't really like that message. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. Curious why. Yeah. And she didn't resonate with that because in seeing possibility in others, because she had been conditioned to see limitation, to connect via in a space of, well, I'm trying to build my dream. I'm trying to go for it. And it's this energy of trying that a lot of people have when going for a dream that can connect a lot of people. And you see it in accountability groups. And that's not to disparage accountability, but there comes a space where accountability comes from like holding people's feet to the fire, which is the power of coaching, as you know, like saying, you've said you wanted this goal. Are you actually committed to achieving it and doing whatever it takes to get to it within ethical and legal boundaries? Committing to that emotional backing of the decision. And most people really suck at making a decision, quite frankly, because we try, we have our would likes, we have our want tos, but a decision is that line in the sand. It's that space where we say, this is a non-negotiable. I'm going for this regardless. And it's hard. I mean, I experienced this when writing my book. Like the whole process of writing a book, I have 3 half-written books in my Scrivener file that I had started writing since 2015. And I'd always wanted to be a solo published author. And the trick that I used was in anchoring my book to the long-term vision of one of my companies, because I saw it as a lead magnet, as a space that as a tool that people can use if they aren't able to work with us yet, it can at least prepare them. That I had to anchor it to my greatest excuse, which actually was my business. Because every time I would sit down, I would get the book half written, and it was half written. And then I would have more need for client delivery. We would get more clients, would get more leads. I'd have to manage the lead flow. I'd get to manage, get to be directing the sales, get to, encourage and make sure client delivery and client management and satisfaction was being taken care of. So my business became my greatest excuse as to not create this greater thing that I had always wanted to create. And I actually had I call it the death tax imposed on me, because in 2021, I lost 3 family members and 2 family friends, and moved countries and then moved states. So there was a lot of grief, and that included my father. And there's a massive identity shift that comes when you lose a caregiver, and especially one that you have a complex relationship with. And it took about 2 years of processing through the grief. But finally, in 2024, I was able to really sit with myself. And I said, if I died in this year, what would I regret not becoming? And I think that's a very valuable question to ask, because tomorrow is never promised.
Totally.
And I'm very grateful for all of the the tragedy, because it did allow me to have conversations. Like, I will never forget my conversation with my aunt 5 days before she passed, and having the privilege and the honor of having that conversation to hear what someone at the end of their life regrets.
Yeah.
And to say, like, what would I really regret not fully leaning into? Because we have this perception that time is going to keep going on and that tomorrow we're going to have, and we're going to get to go for it again tomorrow. That's not necessarily promised. And so I sat with myself and I said, I need to trick myself into writing this book because I have to write this book. So I'm going to tie it as an asset to my business, which made me be able to lean into it. And then I also recognized, like, it wasn't getting done within the time frame of a pattern of consistency of, like, oh, I'm just going to write a little every day. Like, that's just not how I roll. I had to book time. I booked an Airbnb and I said, I locked myself in the Airbnb for 4 days while doing 75 hard. So the only thing I could get out and do was do my walks and my exercise.
Yeah.
And then I would come back and then I brought food. I did not leave that place for 4 days. I didn't completely finish. I had one chapter left. And I said, okay, I'd have to, again, remake that decision and that commitment with myself. Is this book coming out on International Podcasting Day? Because my whole book is about how to leverage podcast guesting to generate leads and sales and income for your business, because that's what it did for my coaching business, was generated over $250,000 in new business revenue for my coaching business. So I was like, yes, let's go for this. Let's double down on this book. It's going to serve a lot of people. It's going to serve business owners who I love helping. And it's a great asset and it's a tool. And I am so excited to bring this to the world. Is this, again, I need to recommit? And I said, yes, I need to remake that commitment again and again and again. Sometimes that is more the decision making that needs to happen than these big old macro decisions of, I'm going to invest in this program. It's then, are you then going to commit to the daily intentional aspect of doing the work and the things that need to be done inside of that?
Yeah.
And inside of that container, like you were saying with your VIP day, like, you had made the investment and then you made that conscious commitment to keep showing up for that investment. And it's not just making the investment and then, okay, wash your hands of it and it's done. It's like, there has to be a daily courageous action step that is being taken.
Totally. And I think that I 100% agree with everything you just said and whatnot. And I think there's an element I'm like, yes, I hate the consistency stuff every single day. I'm like, shoot me now if I have to show up and do the same thing over and over and over again, which is why I love that I found the cycle, because it creates that element of newness. And I actually have spent the last year or so creating my program, couple years of my program has been on evergreen. And I'm like, I just don't think I like this. And I was actually talking to another cycle syncing expert friend of mine. And she was like, I found my sweet spot. I go hard and I'll push and I'll sell and I do all the calls and I'll do the things. And then I just sit back and I implement or support my clients for the next couple of months. She's like, it's been so amazing. She goes, it's exactly what I needed. And I was like, I think that's why I'm right now feeling on edge with my program, is because I've been trying to get it to this evergreen place. I'm like, I can't do this. I don't like the that monotony of the same thing over and over and over again. I like the cyclical nature of this, let me lock myself away, go all in when I feel that energy, and then let me pull out when I need to pull out and things. The other thing I feel like I just want to highlight for me, I think that there's this element of I've realized this last year or so is that the most important work that I needed to do in my business was actually not the work, but the actual, I had to be okay sitting with myself and listening to my inner intuition, because I was so busy listening to everybody else's and taking all the action of everybody else that I spun out, even in that sense of oh, that person's doing this, I'm going to do that. And that person's doing this. That was one of the things as I'm writing down this VIP day. She's like, what's your source of funnel of getting people in? I'm like, well, which one? I have way too many, because I'm just that thing works over there and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to do all these things that really the most valuable skill that I've had and this may just be the journey where I'm at, is like, I need to actually set those boundaries to say, you know what, today I'm not booking any calls. Today I'm not doing any like should do's. I'm not doing any of this stuff. Like, I need to go in and figure out what is that best action. Like, what is that commitment? What is that vision? Where am I going? What am I creating? Like, how am I doing this? So that when I do take those actions and I do take those steps, they are moving the needle, and that it's not just, I look back and I'm like, man, I wasted so much time and energy on stuff that I did not need to be doing because I saw other people doing it and I thought that that's what I needed to do. And I like wish I could go back. Where so like now it's like, whew, me getting centered, me getting grounded, like me getting in my own vision is the most important thing for me to do before I take any action and take any step and move forward in any way.
100%. I spend so much more time in planning now than
Yeah.
I ever did before. Cause I was so prior to, I would even say some, the past year, like prior to having my daughter, like she just was such a catalyst of so much awareness because I knew I know she's my last. And my body just knew the pregnancy, the labor, the experience that I was just like, I know I want to be complete with diapers by the time I'm 40. So I I'm savoring these moments and I'm very intentional with my calendar, more so than I ever was before. And I used to have boundaries and I like, man, when I lived in Australia, because of the time zone difference, there were some crazy times that I would work because I was also in the seat of being the breadwinner. And it was a necessary step for that season of my business. But now with having more structure and more support and more sustainable income, like I'm in a space where I'm like, okay, I'm going to create from doing a lot more planning and intentional launching rather than like spinning my wheels in the doing aspect of doing all the things, because my business actually needs me to be thinking more than it needs me to be doing.
Yes.
That's the doing is for my team. Like me, I need to be in that visionary seat, thinking, planning, strategically seeing, and then being able to hold the vision, not just for myself, but for my family and like the vision that we have for what we're creating with our homestead and what we're creating with our life and what we're creating with our legacy. And I think that's something that's more important to me as a mom, is my title as mom has always come above and beyond the title of CEO. And I've said that in the past, but I think now it is even more embodied, because that the title of CEO, I would still prioritize business meetings over my kids from time to time and I would make allowances. And I'm like, no, I have very clear boundaries of when I work, when I don't, and how many appointments I'm taking throughout the days that I do work. And that gives so much more freedom. And there does come freedom from having cyclical structures in place. And like for me, one of the things that has really helped is cycling my days according to the astrological cycles of the days. So for example, like if you look at the Latin origins from French, Spanish, and the Romance languages, all of the days are named after the planets. So Monday correlates with the moon. Tuesday is Mardi in French. It correlates with Mars, which is a planet of action. Wednesday correlates with Mercury, which is a planet of communication. So I do a lot of communication, lead generation, podcast interviews, coaching sessions on Wednesday and Thursday. Jupiter is the day for Thursday. And I found that syncing my schedule, which in relationship to the planetary structure, has actually provided me with a ton of rhythm that I didn't know that I needed, because I have the cycle, and my cycle has shifted obviously through pregnancy and labor and whatnot, but it's back in tune with the moon to a degree.
Yeah.
But also having these additional structures of like a weekly schedule that is in flow with the planets. And then also looking at the seasonal structures of business. So a lot of times people are setting New Year's resolutions in winter, and seasonally nothing is growing in winter.
Yes.
So honestly, like looking at spring and looking at harvesting in the fall. And when I actually look at the patterns of going back, and this would only come with being able to have intentional planning and visionary time. When I look at the
Mm-hmm.
alignment of things that I've manifested, launches that have gone really well, there were seasons that I was launching in where the best launches came in spring and in summer and in the fall of reaping the harvest. Like my book launched in
Mm-hmm.
the fall. I know your book launched in the fall
Mm-hmm.
as well. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a harvest to be reaped from that. And then I hit winter. And winter
Mm-hmm.
was a complete restructuring of our entire agency business where I was like, oh, all right, things are dying off and things I'm seeing what are the plants proverbially that
Yeah.
aren't working, that
Yeah.
are these systems, the structures, the pieces that aren't working that I need to clear out and let die so that we can be renewed in the spring.
Yeah.
And adding in these other additional rhythmic structures has provided me with so much more grace and ease and feeling of alignment with the natural rhythm that we are attuning to.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things like I feel like, I mean, that's you're speaking my language and then we're on the same page. Like I don't, yes, yes. But I feel like a lot of businesses aren't doing that. Like a lot of businesses are just this like go all the time and push all the time and work all the time. And that cyclical seasonal rhythm, like I said, even with me with launching, I'm like, I'm craving that essence of like going all in and having this season of harvest and reaping and planning and like the rhythm of that like for me right now with the more of this like evergreen thing, it's just not there. And so it's like created this real, I mean, my revenue tanked last year, like literally, like was awful. And I think that
Yeah,
was part of
same.
it was like my energy wasn't there. It wasn't in that, you know? So I think it makes a huge difference when we start to really look at that. Like, how do I honor not just my own inner rhythms, but like these rhythms that exist within the world? Like last night, actually, I took my daughter to the beach. She was having a rough day and it was like technically her special date night. We haven't been doing them. Life has been busy, but
Yeah.
hers was technically yesterday. And so she's like, I want my special date. And then we had a huge meltdown. So she and I went to the beach. And as we're sitting there at the beach, I was like, isn't it fascinating that like day in, day out, the ocean goes in and out and in and out. And it like has this like rhythm that it does like every single day. Like that's its rhythm. Like, and how when we start to sit back and look at that of like the moon goes around every day, the earth, like, or, you know, it does its thing and the sun goes around every day, like all these things that happen and we take it for granted. Like we don't really even look at like the cosmic interplay of everything that's happening all of the time. And when we tap into that, there is a magic that happens when we start to feel like we lean into like these rhythms that our body exists. And we weren't made to be on all the time. Like we were not made to be just go power horses all of the time.
Yeah.
There's this rhythm. So I appreciate you bringing that up. This has been such a fun conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I know I have your copy of your book. I would love for you to share more about your book and where people can find you and kind of learn more about what you got going on.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about how to make every podcast want you and leverage podcast guesting as a form of lead generation, sales, conversions, and relationship building for quality networking, then just go to makeeverypodcastwantyou.com. And if you are wanting to expand your energy of leadership and how you show up for your business, then that is where we have our Big Queen Energy Masterclass. And so you can just head on over to crownyourself.com/masterclass. And that is where you can jump in on that to be able to really harness the natural energy and rhythm that you can have in your business, building a holistic life, business, and relationships that truly rule from your seat of power and not from outsourcing your power to other sources.
So good. So good. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll make sure you have all those links in the show notes for you to be able to grab and access. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been so much fun.
Amazing, Renae. And you also have to link to your episode on the Crown Yourself podcast because
Yes.
you were fire. Absolute fire
Thanks.
queen.
I love it. Thank you.